Hey folks, welcome back to the program. This is Chris live in central Pennsylvania for another exclusive interview, this time with a South African comedian turned politician, somebody we both know, we all know, Karou Charou. That's his stage name, but not his real name. Like me, he goes by something different than actually, but he goes by Karou Charou. Let me welcome to the program. It's been a long time since we chatted, but he was a great host to me when I was in Chatsworth. We had an epic visit there. How you doing, brother? What's going on?
Was that about 2 years back?
Yeah, no, was it 2022? I want to say, yeah, it's been 2 years back. You've been busy since then, and you founded a political party, and it's the 1860 NIC. Well, they're calling it NIC Congress in the press, but that seems redundant. NIC Congress, it is the 1880 NIC, the National Indian Congress, correct?
No, it's not the National Indian Congress. So that's where we have to set the record straight there.
Okay, there we go.
So 1860 is obviously the year the indentured laborers arrived here in South Africa. Mm-hmm. NIC is not an acronym for Natal Indian Congress, although it bears reference to the NIC. So the NIC as the National Indian Congress, Natal Indian Congress back in the day, 1884. So it bears reference, but it's not an acronym for Natal Indian Congress. So it's 1860 NIC Congress. Hence, it's not Congress. So it's 1860 NIC Congress. The NIC there is in the name. I would say it's to bear reference to the NIC, which was the original body in this country even before the ANC was formed. And already the NIC at that point realized that they needed to fight for Indian rights and be a voice for the Indian community even back in 1894. So it's merely a reference point. And I think it's imperative for us. 1860, we landed here, and then the first Indian body or first political body in the country was NIC. That's what it is. So, yeah. It's not, so NIC, once again, is not an acronym for Natal Indian Congress. It just bears reference to them as the NIC.
Yeah, but so the proper name of the party is 1860 NIC Congress. Is that correct?
Correct. There you go.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're straight so people understand, because we don't want to confuse them. But so let's talk about that. I think people outside South Africa, and maybe even many South Africans, don't know the history. From 1860 to 1911, 152,000 Indians came to South Africa into what it was then Natal province, and they came initially to work in the sugar fields as indentured servants, if I recall correctly. Did I get any of that wrong?
No, you're 100% on the points.
Okay, so that population today has grown significantly, well over 1 million South Africans now whose origin trace their roots back to there, and they play a significant role in South Africa economically, even politically. Many Indian South Africans were key members of the ANC during its time, its heyday, and they played a key role. Of course, we know that Mahatma Gandhi also lived in South Africa. He was an attorney. He also served as a stretcher bearer, I believe, during the Anglo-Boer War. And he was a rather significant personality. We know what he went on to achieve in India. So the tie between India and South Africa goes back quite a ways. And 1860 is a rather significant date to start with, isn't it?
No, of course. It is for South African or South Africans of Indian origin. 1860 is momentous. I mean, 16th of November, just the Saturday when past, is the day that the first ship of indentured laborers arrived in the port of Natal. So that's the day I launched my party, and I thought it was significant, I thought it was auspicious, momentous, a lot of sentimental value in that our forefathers landed here on that day, 16th of November, and my party being called 1860 NIC Congress, the only foot that we launched on that day. So every year on that day, we're going to celebrate our birthday and hone in on the day to educate everyone in this country, around the world, on what 1860, 16 November means to us.
Well, it is an important date. And of course, for America, we have rather important dates we remember too. 1607, the founding of Jamestown. 1619, the first arrival of slaves from a Dutch ship. 1776, the Declaration of Independence. 1789, the adoption of our Constitution. We remember these significant dates. Whether it's an ethnic community or it's origins of a nation, dates are important. So I think it's important that folks remember that. But let me change gears a little bit. We'll come back to this in a while. Now, you ran as an independent candidate, which is something the courts allowed in this last election, which was on May 29th. I have to tell you, for the life of me, I can't find your vote totals. I'm not trying to embarrass or make you look good, but were you able to get the vote totals? Because I read on multiple places that you were either the top or one of the top vote getters amongst independent candidates in the May 29th election. Is that true?
Well, to set the record straight, out of 11 independents that ran in the country, I was the best performing independent of all of them. So I ended up the top independent candidate in the country out of the 11. I was the only independent to run in my province of KZN, the only independent, and I was the only Indian independent on the ballot sheet. So to put that into perspective. So yeah, I ended up with 12,323 votes, and the nearest guy to me was about 10,000 plus votes.
Well, congratulations. That's pretty impressive. I also ran for office, and my primary was in April, and I received 1,000 votes. So there were 5 candidates in my race, and but the top candidate just got 3,000. So it was split. The vote was split. But that's an impressive accomplishment, and I think a lot of people who may be familiar with you said, "Why is this guy running for office? I mean, isn't he a comedian? I mean, look, but you can have an affectation and enter politics if you have a desire." So, what motivated you to run as an independent candidate?
I like to quote from the movie Shrek, where Shrek says, he described himself, he says, "I'm like onion, I have layers." And unfortunately, most society only wants to see a comedian as being a very one-dimensional person, someone with a very low brain capacity, or basically an idiot. Whereas it's the furthest from the truth. So I've been an activist for many years. I've been a humanitarian, and I've been involved in politics. The fact that I did comedy, people only want to focus on that. But I've been an activist for many years, humanitarian, and I've been educating myself on politics. And then I found myself in this space where, as a comedian, entertainer, humanitarian, I found myself people gravitating towards me in terms of what I was speaking about and how I was speaking. And when there's a vacuum of leadership, people gravitate to anyone who's basically speaking out for them. So in the last 4 or 5 years, I found a lot of my community gravitating towards me. And when I started to research that, I realized the reason is there's a vacuum of leadership. And hence I said, okay, if nobody else wants to step up, let me step up. So that's what I did. I stepped up and I said, well, I'm willing to, if nobody else is willing to speak this language, let me give it a shot.
Well, that's honorable. That's noteworthy that you've done that, and I appreciate it. And I can confirm, folks, from my experience with you. Now, our professional relationship goes back a bit further than when I first paid visit to you, because I had you as a guest on my program a few times. But when I visited you in Chatsworth, not only were you an accommodating and very helpful host, but you took me around to show me all the aspects of Chatsworth, all the things. You showed me the very poor folks. And I can attest, and I've said many times here for people that don't know or don't know you that well, we met people and they didn't know you were coming. And these people absolutely adore you, love you where we went, because you've done so much for their community, trying to get resources to them, make sure that they had access to things. You showed me black folks in Chatsworth. You showed me Indians in Chatsworth. You told me the history that you grew up with, how things changed and how the land was reallocated and folks were dumped there, that sort of thing. We talked a lot about it. And one thing you did show me is that you took me to a place where people were living in these like containers, and they were legitimate political refugees who sought asylum legally and came there, and you showed me around there. And all these people seem to have great affinity and respect for you. And I have to tell you that when people look at you, like you say, Shrek is multi-layered of onions, and you look at yourself the same way, it's very true. People, I saw it in the Army. Every time I went somewhere in the Army, the people in the Army only saw you for the rank that you are now and the position you filled. So when I was at the War College, for example, I was a senior intelligence official at the Army War College, just by happenstance because of my experience and my rank. But every time there was an event involving intelligence professionals, kind of like a get-together with officers to talk about a professional development topic, I wasn't on the list. They never sent me anything because I was the director of African Studies. but I'm the senior intel guy. So it seems to me it's the same way. People focus in on how they associate with you. And a lot of people look at you and see a guy who's a comedian or been a successful comedian, but you're much more complicated than that. And I can attest to that personally. And I want to thank you. I've done it before, but I want to thank you right here on air for the incredible tour that you gave. Erica was with us. Erica, you gave us a great tour, took us around, showed us everything. It was amazing. And the best part was he came back and nobody had broken into my rental, my hire, and all my stuff was still there.
Now, I think it was important for someone like you who shows an interest here to really get a feel for what goes on in the country, because in any country in the world, you just see what's on the news, and you have a perception based on what the media tells you. And I tend to show you what really goes on the ground, how people interact, the actual cohesion that happens between Indians and African communities in Chatsworth and Phoenix, which is the real hub of KZN. And in July 2021, the unrest, we saw that the KZN is the catalyst for the rest of South Africa. If KZN burns, this country will burn. So everything happens. Chatsworth and Phoenix is the gunpowder of the country, if you put it in that way. If Chatsworth and Phoenix burns, the country will burn. It'll just spread like wildfire. So it's important to make sure that we know that we have stable relationships, that KZN is in a good space, that there's good Indo-African relations. You've seen it yourself. I mean, what I showed you is a shopping center, a mall. People are not interested in the South African politics. They were interested in living their daily lives, going about their business. I mean, stallholders, vendors on the street were African people in a predominantly Indian area, had no issue. And that's what I wanted to show you. No matter what somebody else tries to tell you, KZN is actually performing quite well. And the relationships are good.
Well, and that's been my experience throughout South Africa, and that's an argument I've always made. And a lot of South Africans will take umbrage with that and argue with me, but I can speak from experience in every province in South Africa where I see white folks, Indian folks, colored folks, black folks who don't care about the political nonsense. They just want to raise their family and practice their faith and have prosperity and get education for their kids and get ahead, and get a Game Boy for their kids if that's necessary and make the car payment and get a house and that sort of thing. Yes, there are people who delve into this political nonsense. They're just merchants, race merchants, grievance merchants. They're all over the place. And so what I liked about my visit with you is that it really just confirmed what I've talked about in so many places. But I got to tell you, I don't know if I told you then, I got criticism from one of my viewers who likes to come on and give me a hard time. He's like, "Oh, so you went to Chatsworth? Why didn't you go to?" There's a predominantly black township nearby. I can't think of the name of it. He says, "Why didn't you go there?" I'm like, "Well, did you offer to take me around and show me around? I'm not just going to drive in the neighborhood. I'm not from there. Come on, sit serious here."
No, for sure. I mean, the fact that I don't go into the townships, to be honest, and I wouldn't go there unless I know I'm going with someone. Because there are certain areas that are no-go zones, and you can't just go into an area blind, and that doesn't make sense. So even in Chatsworth, I wouldn't take you to certain areas that I think are no-go zones. We don't go there. You're just putting yourself under pressure for no reason. So you're right in what you asked him. If he was willing to take you into a township and do that, why not? It's easy to criticize from the outset, but you did get to go where you could go, and I was the vehicle to do that.
Absolutely, and I think it was fantastic. It was an incredible experience, and I hopefully do it again. Although, it's tough for me to get down to KZN, but I've been using the excuse of the Sharks games to come down there of lately. So the last couple of times I made it down just because I had a Sharks game down there. So it was a good excuse. So, all right, let's get back to the party. So arguably very successful independent candidacy, first time out of the gate. You kind of set a record. I mean, you should go down the history books. The first time that this was possible under the new dispensation, and you got the highest vote total, so it's very impressive. But what's the spark for starting the 1860 NIC Congress? I mean, it's and we're going to talk more about it. It's not exclusively an ethnic-based party, although certainly it's built around the Indian population of KZN. But what's the motivation? Now we understand why you ran as independent candidate. So why did you run, or why are you founding a political party? Because it's gotten a bit of attention, as it should.
Well, when I did run for independent candidacy, I made it clear that whether I got a seat or not, I was going to form a party. And look, based on the votes that I got, and I could have gotten a lot more, I can easily get a seat in city council on my own. I'll get a seat. I'm guaranteed to get a seat. But the one seat is not good enough. It'll look after me, I'll get a salary, I'll get whatever. But my mindset is on me getting a salary. My mindset is about what do I do for my people. That's why I got in the game in the first place. I can very well run, ward, get a ward, I'll get the votes, I'll get my seat. That's a done deal. It's a no-brainer. I'll get it. But the trick is, how do I benefit my community and my people? That's why I got into politics in the first place. And the way to do that is, in city council, especially as the local government elections are coming up, we need seats at the table. We need to be represented at the table. And right now we don't have that. So, and the more seats we have, the more representation we have, the louder our voices, and we get heard. So that's why the party is important. The party is important for us to have more seats around the table. And that's why the party is there. My vision is not about myself. If I was very small-minded, narrow-minded, I get my seat, I'll have my place there, I'll have my package, and I'll be done. But I'm a bit more than that. So the party is about, and the party is also the following. The party will have to continue when I have closed my eyes, dead and gone. It's about building a legacy. It's just not about a one-step process. It's about when I'm no longer around, that my people and my community have a structure in place that they can then continue to voice their opinion in the years to come. So it's much bigger than me. The party had to be in place to supersede me when I'm no longer around.
So what you're saying is that you have a vision for the future, something leaders, genuine leaders, look to, not something we see in South African politics. You're actually looking down the road to where this should go, and you've realized from the outset that the party has to be bigger than you. It has to be something that's bigger than you. Otherwise, what's the point? And that's what frustrates me with so many of these. In South Africa, we have so many of these vanity parties. I would call MK a vanity party. I would call the Good Party a vanity party. They exist for the veneration or for the purposes of the leader of the party. That's my view on it. Now, people can disagree with me, and that's fine. But it sounds like 1860 NIC Congress is a party that's focusing on something to achieve. So let's get to that. Have you already drafted a constitution or I hate the word manifesto, but a party platform on what issues are of importance to the party so people can see if this is the party for me?
Yeah, we have a constitution in place. Our manifesto is what I've been talking about. We haven't gotten down to a manifesto. I must at the outset say, since the election and all of that, it's been pretty hectic to get the party registered. Only since last week, I couldn't come out and do lots of things until the party was officially registered. So it was a lot of work going around in the background, trying to get things done. Now that the party is officially registered, we've taken on a whole new dimension, and now the building process really starts about the team around us and all of that. We have a good constitution in place, and we work on the manifesto. For now, it's all about just getting the word out. For me, at the moment, is to let my community know that there is a party, that there is an alternative. That's the first step. And we are building a core team around us to make sure that we build a very, very, very solid foundation. I think to me, it's important that the people around me and around us are because I've seen many political parties and organizations implode from the inside because they don't have the right people there. And straight away, within 3 months, there's arguments in the party, there's disagreements and all of that. So I'm very clear about, I think it's a marathon. I'm pacing myself. I'm not rushing into it. But the foundation, like I said, when I'm dead and gone, the base and the structure must be really, really solid to take us forward. So we're in very, very early development stages, but I'm willing to take the time to do it properly.
Well, let me ask this question. Is this something potentially in the cards or in the offering? You and I both are familiar, and you probably more so than me, familiar with the history of Indians in South Africa and the tension that has occurred between Black Africans and Indians in South Africa. Of course, basically what I would call a pogrom against Indians that took place decades ago in KZN, in which shops were raided, people were murdered, massacred. But we've heard recent years with people like the EFF running around talking about Indians and speaking poorly of Indian South Africans. Is there going to be any effort on your part of your party to educate South Africans about the true history of the contribution of Indians in South Africa? Will that be part of what you're trying to accomplish? Because I think it's probably not a bad idea.
Actually, it's a very big part of what I plan to do. Because even in my own community, we first need to build a sense of pride within ourselves. And pride comes from your culture and your history. You cannot be proud of yourself and your people if you don't know your history. We have religious leaders, we have leaders we have got heroes in our community, but because the history is not written, we don't know of these heroes. So a very big part of what I'm trying to say, and even in my election campaign, I was saying, why is 1949 not spoken about? A very, very major part in our history. 1949, the first ever uprising of the African community against the Indian community. It's a big part of our history, but it's not spoken about. Nobody wants to speak about it. If you take July 2021, they want to erect a monument and not taking away from the lives lost there, erect a monument for them. So what about erecting a monument for 1949? For those innocent men, women, and children who were slain, raped, murdered? Why not? But it's a sore topic, but it has to be spoken about. We have to address our history. Our children need to know that we had heroes. We learn about the white colonial heroes, and we look up to them. But then it works against us because we don't believe that we are heroes, that we are real people who've done tangible things, that we need to look up to them. So a very big part of my campaign is going to be about learning about our history, who we are, what we are. Because for me, you see what apartheid did? Apartheid broke us as a people. When we start to see somebody else who's more worthy than you, and then you always have a subservient role. I can tell you right now, if I walk, even today, into my family's home, and there's an event, and if a white man walks into the room, immediately there's respect afforded to a white man only based on his skin color. Because we've been indoctrinated to believe that a white man is superior to you. And I can tell you, I'm guilty of the same thing. Because it's this indoctrination that you don't realize that even in my comedy career, I'm one of the most successful comics in the country. But my own community will rate me against a white comic who comes nowhere near me. But so long as he's white. So they start to measure you in that context. It's what apartheid did. And it's going to take us a long time to break that down and realize you are worthy. You've got your own value. Value yourself. And it's a sense of pride that I want to try to instill in my community. That's till the day that I'm no longer around. But it's very, very important. Otherwise, if you don't value yourself, that's where we are at the moment. It's really we don't think that we are as good as we are. We don't value ourselves.
No, I think it's a very good point. And when I first started spending a significant amount of time in Africa 2.5 decades ago, it was still a time when that was prevalent, not just in South Africa, but throughout the continent. So in West Africa, in French-speaking countries, I would always be addressed as chef or patron, chef, patron. People would always come up to me. And in South Africa, people are still calling me boss. I was being called boss all the time. It's something very comfortable for me. I grew up in all kinds of circumstances, including abject poverty, where I had no electricity. We had no ablution unit. I used an outhouse, an outdoor privy to go to the bathroom. And I'm used to carrying my own bags. Even as an officer, I did all my own things as a senior officer. I didn't have people bringing me lunch and stuff like that. Whereas in the British military, they enlisted serve you tea and bring you food. For me, it was a very uncomfortable and off-putting thing. And I experienced it in Africa, and you're right. It's something that gets ingrained in the mindset of people. And it's not just, in South Africa, it's not just, Indians and coloreds and blacks. It's also whites too. A lot of whites, some people, when they walk in, if something doesn't happen a certain way, they have, what's going on? I'm not being shown, unconsciously they're not being shown respect. That's just been automatic in the past. And, the bottom line is I always tell people, unless it's a cesarean, a C-section, we all come into the world the same way. And no matter how much you fight Father Time, none of us are going to make it past 130. Trust me, unfortunately. So you're going to leave this earth at some point. You're no better than anyone else. Some people just apply themselves better. Do you think that's a pretty good attitude? I think it is.
Yeah, no, sure. But it takes people like you and me to be able to, so many people are unaware of what's going on around them. It's all about education. You don't blame them. People just go on about their daily lives and think life is such. And then suddenly you speak to them and say, you know what, I never thought about it that way. I said, well, that's why I'm here. I'm here to make you think on another level, to make you understand where you are, to make you understand this. So I said, and even they asked me why we need to do this, why are we fighting this? Why don't we just leave it? I said, no, we cannot leave it. Because I was in a meeting with the guy and he says to me, but aren't we being, Indian guy says to me, but aren't we being, we only Indians and everybody else. Long story short, I had a long chat with him. And after 10 minutes, he started to realize what I was trying to say, that you need to understand that your daughter and your child in that school needs to first appreciate who they are. And then the light bulb went off in his head. And now he's like a big supporter of my party, because initially when he came in, he didn't realize what we were doing. Because he's also indoctrinated in the sense that, let's just fit in. Why are we creating problems? I said, no, this is why we need to do this. Your daughter or your son in that school needs to have their own sense of identity and pride. And then you know how they can integrate and still keep their sense of pride and carry on our history. Then there's a light bulb moment for him. So it's up to influencers or people like us to be able to speak this language to make the wheels turn.
Well, I agree 100%. Let me just run through three examples of how things become so caustic and damage relations between ethnic groups and racial groups. So one is the Hank's Old Irish Pub. Today it was announced that they got a 1.25 million rand settlement against the gentleman who played his race hustling hoax against them. Now, it was found to be no merit to it last year, and the charges were dismissed, but the business was destroyed because he claimed that his friend was mistreated because he was black. It was total nonsense, and it was proven to be such. Now there's a judgment against it, but the damage is done. That business has been destroyed. Those people's lives, reputation is gone. Then we have this other situation where the Sunday Times ran an article claiming that AfriForum has never stood up for black South Africans being murdered, which is demonstrably a lie. It's provable that it's not the case. And then we have the situation in Phoenix after July 2021 insurrection that took place, in which people in residential neighborhoods were left unprotected by the police, who had no ammunition, they had no plan, they weren't organized, despite the fact that from June 29th, I told them to prepare for chaos. They didn't listen. They didn't listen. And so we had the EFF marching in Phoenix. We had the police arresting the Phoenix accused, imprisoning them, guilty of no crimes. And in fact, one of them died in prison because of inadequate medical condition. If he'd not been in prison, the man would likely still be alive today, I suspect. I mean, this is the problem when people do this stupidity and don't focus on the reality. You know, I think it's really shameful. And by the way, any update on the Phoenix accused? I can find nothing on these guys. Now it's been a couple of years.
Well, the Phoenix accused, I've been championing them from the beginning. Most of them have been released. Just two brothers they were charged for, I think, GBH. They were not charged for murder. That's about it. Of the 30 to 50 plus arrested, 95% of them have been released after spending more than 9 months to a year in incarceration. And clearly, these guys were just the fall guys, the scapegoats, when the public was begging for blood. I mean, even the media hasn't come to the party and really highlighted what really happened. These were innocent men, children, boys, 18 years old, who was, because they were on the road. And when I addressed the CRL commission, the CRL commission came to find reasons what happened and why it happened. And they basically said, why were these guys on the road? What were they doing? Can I just declare? What? So basically they said they wanted to make it to be a race issue. Why did these guys need to attack or racially profile? And one of the things I said to the CRL commission, I said, when people took to the street and went on the street corners trying to protect their families, there was a guy with a degree, there was a guy with a high school education, there was a guy with a standard 5 in primary school education. All of these guys were on the front line. And when there's somebody approaching them, the guy with a degree might react in a certain way, the guy with the metric certificate, and then there's a guy who's a thug. You want him to behave in the way you want to behave, when in fact, that guy had no right to be on the road standing and defending anyone. It is purely through the lack of police, of law enforcement who deserted them, that thug is on the road. And when that thug sees an African guy or anyone approaching and he gives him a couple of boots or whatever he does, you now want to judge him for that, when actually he had no capacity to be on the front line in the first place. I mean, this was clearly evident in the early days of lockdown, when the army killed an African guy in his own yard. And that's because the army does not know how to deal with civilians. And here we had ordinary civilians trying to man a front line and protect shopping centers, homes, people, livelihoods. I said, that's not acceptable. It's really not acceptable. You've put these people into an awkward situation, and now you're judging them on how they have behaved. And it's totally unacceptable. Really, it's not. And the whole race narrative of the so-called Indian community and Phoenix community, you can see it's been shot to bits. There really was no race issue. This is all politically motivated and politically driven.
No, absolutely. The story you're talking about, if I recall, is Collins Kosa, who was murdered in Alexandria by the South African National Defense Force in broad daylight, as I recall. It's absolutely horrific. Now, the situation we're talking about in Phoenix, to me, it was, they went for the usual suspects. Let's round up the Indian guys because Indian neighborhoods. And that's the problem I had with it. I mean, it seemed to me there wasn't a lot of focus on the actual justice of what needed to be done there. And just there was a lot of hysteria that was being stoked by politicians. And I would say they were in large part majority politicians with the majority of the population. So what a horrific experience for those guys. Spend 9 months in jail having never committed any offense. That's just so wrong. And the fact that no one's rehabilitated them. There's been no effort to say, hey, they didn't do anything wrong.
No, just to understand the depth of what happened to them. I mean, if you take an ordinary guy who was just a breadwinner for his family, and you take him out of his family for 8 to 9 months to a year, the knock-on effect on his entire family, he can almost never rebuild that. You can almost never get it back. The family was without food, the children couldn't get to school, it was just horrific. And there's been no reparation, in terms of repairing their lives. You've done a horrific deed to them. And no one said sorry. Oh, by the way, I'm not sure if you followed about the JICS report?
Which report?
You know about the JICS, JICS.
The Joint Intelligence Committee.
JICS is the Judicial Inspectorate
different one.
Correctional Services, right? So when the Phoenix accused were arrested and they were laying complaints that they were being mistreated, JICS got into the picture and started to investigate the matter. And coincidentally, I went with one of the guys to meet one of the major officers or the team leader. And this guy surprised me because he was really interested in finding the truth, And a year later, he released a report that actually the Phoenix accused were inhumanely treated. The Phoenix accused were actually the correctional service were being racist towards them, And the guy who died in prison, he was denied medical attention. So the report turned on its head that these guys were actually the innocent guys and they were ill-treated. They were inhumanely treated, But here's the thing. When the Phoenix accused were arrested, the media was screaming it on all channels, racist Indians in Phoenix. When the report came out, a year later, none of the media reported on it because it didn't suit the narrative that they wanted to promote. Because clearly, the guys who were arrested in Phoenix were just scapegoats. Their lives were turned upside down. I mean, even in apartheid days, over 90 days in incarceration is illegal.
Yeah.
I mean, but now in modern day society, there were 6 months, 9 months to a year not being given bail. Unheard of. Nobody was speaking the language. They were just thrown to the wolves. Just no care.
Yeah, no, it's and we see Cyril Ramaphosa at the G20 summit talking about, we must adhere to the United Nations Charter for Humane Treatment of People and end the genocide in Gaza. Yeah, but what about the treatment of people in South Africa? Maybe you should focus on that. So I think hopefully the appointment of Peter Groenewald, an honorable man, as the Minister for Corrections will have an impact on improving corrections in South Africa. I'm not sure. I've been trying to get an interview with him for some time. I've interviewed him many times, but that was when he was not in the government. Now he's in the government, so it's a little bit more challenging. But let's get back to your party because I think a lot of people want to know. How is there enthusiasm? Obviously, at least 12,000 people like you as a candidate. Are you getting? Is there any groundswell building already, or is it tough sledding? I can't imagine starting a political party is an easy process. I mean, you've got to raise money, you've got to find people who are willing to work with the party, hire a few people at some point, and you've got to have volunteers. You've got to get the word out. I mean, social media helps, but it's a lot more than that. So what's it like in the early days of the 1860 NIC Congress?
I'll tell you what, since the news broke, the last week has been phenomenal. The number of people that have, you got to understand the situation in the country, the Indian community in this country, where they've been rudderless for many years without a leader. And suddenly now they see there's this party that brings hope. And I've been reached out to by so many different people from so many different platforms. Even I met a guy today. This guy was in politics since 1994. He's been in the structure of the NP, meeting PW Botha and all that. The thing is, he says to me, dude, you are in such a momentous situation at the moment. It's unreal where you find yourself and the time you find yourself. He says, this really is the time. And I've embraced that. I've realized that we're sitting in this vacuum that we are filling, and I didn't have to do much really to get the groundswell going, because people were hungry for this, but they really had no one to turn to. They really had no one to go to. Now we're giving them a viable option to say, this party can fulfill my mandate or look after my interests, look after my children. Look, the argument is that a lot of parties do good things, but none of them is going to look after the Indian community. That's a fact, because they have to look after everyone. So there's no party speaking to a specific denomination like the Indian community. We have got the NCC, the National Colored Congress, looking after the colored community, predominantly in the Western Cape and around the country as a colored NCC now. But there was no party looking after the Indian since the demise of Mr. Raj Bansi. Then his party, the MF, also faded away. So now this year, if you studied politics in this country and the Indian community voted for the Democratic Alliance. But they didn't vote for the Democratic Alliance by choice. They voted anti-ANC, if you understand. So the only option they had was the Democratic Alliance. They didn't really want to vote for the DA. They were voting anti-ANC. They didn't see the ANC as an option for them to take. So by default, the Democratic Alliance got the vote of the majority of Indian community. So I think right now, my party is sitting with giving my community, the 2 million odd Indian South Africans in this country, an alternative to the Democratic Alliance.
Well, that's a good point to segue into. I want to get to that, and this is a good time to get to it. But before I do, I'm predicting that the DA has reached its zenith under Helen Zille in 2014. It's never going to achieve anything beyond what they had back then, which is 4 million votes nationally. This last time under Steenhuisen was just 3.5 million. And if what you say is true, and it is, there's going to be a lot of communities that gravitate away from the DA if there's other options. So a lot of people who voted in the municipal election for the Freedom Front Plus went back to the DA so they get a higher percentage in this election for the national level. Those people are disappointed with the GNU, many of them, and they're going to leave the DA. And we're talking about several 100,000 people probably. And then you're talking about Indian community, many of whom have voted for the DA. That could be a few 100,000 more. And suddenly the DA is in jeopardy of being the third or fourth largest party at the national level. It's a very real possibility, particularly with Helen Zille dressing up as a drag queen, running around on television. I mean, what the hell is that all about? I'm still shaking my head there. Zilla Vanilla, what's that all about? It's going to alienate some of their voters. But let's shift from that to, in the first media report that I read, it mentioned that you said that the party is not going to be exclusively for Indians. I mean, you're going to have a big tent and welcome others. And one of the viewers just said something like that. If you don't focus on race, if you focus on community, you'll build something bigger. Now, I'm going to give you a chance to address that. I personally, from what I've seen, don't think you're focusing on race. You are focusing on bringing an option to a community that's been neglected in your view. However, that community is bigger than just Indians. Tell me if I got something wrong.
No, look, I think the person we must use as a yardstick here is Gayton McKenzie.
With the Patriotic Alliance.
Now, Gayton McKenzie is now a minister in the National Assembly. But 10 years ago plus, Gayton McKenzie built his foundation on the back of the colored community. Gayton McKenzie didn't come out speaking about all South Africans. He came about speaking about the colored community. And even in his election campaign, he was clearly focusing on the colored, because that's his voter base. I mean, Gayton McKenzie wasn't going to appeal to white people and African people and Indian people.
Not initially, but now he's in government.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that's where you're going. You got to get a base. You got to have a stronghold of people who are going to give you your base of vote, and you can appeal to others. And that's where McKenzie's trying to appeal to everybody. I mean, this guy's, look, I'm not a Gayton McKenzie fan, but I'm also not an opponent because I like to hold him to account. But he said about not taking his salary, he's going to donate it. And the EFF foolishly challenged him in Parliament this week. And so he disclosed, he said, sure, it's none of your business, but he gave away his entire salary. That drew a lot of people's attention, and it's much bigger than the color community that glom onto that. I think that's where you're going. Sorry to interrupt.
No, 100%. In order to get to any position, you have to know how you're going to get there. So for me, even I think I'm a leader. I think other people need to first like you've interacted with me, correct? And you know things about me because we've interacted. But I need to reach other people. But to get there, I need the platform. The platform is, my core base is my Indianness, and my Indian database. I got 12,000 votes based on the Indian electorate. But once we get to a position of being at the table, we speak for everyone. We speak for everyone. And then come 2029, people will vote for me and my party, not based on race, based on delivering. But to deliver, I need to be at the table to show you as a councillor and a party, I'm able to deliver what you want. So first we need to get to that stage and then it works from there. So clearly we have to use our voter base to get to a certain space. And as Gayton McKenzie is now, Gayton McKenzie will appeal to every race in this country as a minister. But he got there on a certain ticket.
Absolutely. I think that's a very sound approach to it. Because I just finished the conversation in my news broadcast talking about that situation with AfriForum and the Sunday Times, as well as the Hank's Old Irish Pub, and how people just default to race. And one of my viewers said, no, I told you, Chris, 80% of South Africans, that's what they focus on. And I correct the person once again. It's not been my experience. My experience is South Africans, generally, that's not an issue for the most part. That doesn't mean there aren't racists. There are racists of all stripes and all skin pigmentations. Fortunately, the number of those people is very small in my experience, but they're very loud, unfortunately. And politicians who may not be racist use race as a cudgel for political gain. And frankly, I don't think Julius Malema is probably a racist. A lot of people call him a racist, but I don't think he is. I think he's just a political opportunist who uses a topic that works for him. And, that's what happens in politics, the opportunism, right?
No, I think, even me with Julius Malema, I think when people say to me that, I said, too small-minded to realize he's playing populist politics. He's telling his voter base what they want to hear. Mm-hmm. But if you met Julius Malema on another day, he's no different from you and me, and he'll get on with everyone. So that's why I think Julius Malema can make a great president, can make a great leader, because he's politically astute. The problem is at the moment he has to speak to his voter base, and his voter base is saying, tell us this, the land issue. So he's speaking to his voter base. I'm well aware of that. He's not a one-dimensional person. He really is smarter than people think he is. But he has to play to his core market.
Well, but that's proven to be the limiting factor for him, and that's what I've said all along. I've said for years that the ceiling for the EFF at the national level is 15%. They'll never eclipse it because of that. If they get their base and then go beyond it, which they haven't done. They've gone with that message, and now look what's happening. They're being fractured by people looking for opportunities elsewhere, and they're running over to MK and leaving the party. So I mean that was inevitable, I think. But anyway, that's a party I have no respect for, so I will stop talking about them. And let's talk about your party. So going forward, I mean, it's 2024, almost the end of it. We're nearly in 2025. Can you imagine that? 2025, my goodness. Listen, when I was a kid, I said that, man, the year 2000, I'll be an old man. I wasn't, but I mean, looking at the year 2000, I entered my 30s. I'm thinking that's old when I was a kid. Now I'm looking back, it's 2025, my goodness. But 2025, we've got municipal elections coming up in 2026. Yeah, 2026. Do you intend to field candidates for 1860 in 2026 in KZN?
No, 2026 is a big thing for us. 2026 is our first major election. In fact, as a party at the moment, any by-election that happens, in KZN, we can challenge a by-election if we really want to. But definitely the focus is on 2026. We're busy building our structures in each community, and definitely we will field candidates. And I'm sure you do know this. It's a 2-vote system there, right? One is for your candidate, and the other one is for the party, the PR vote. So if we fail to get a ward councillor, we want to get enough PR votes to get PR seats in city council. So we don't necessarily have to win the wards. We get enough votes on the second vote. And because I tell people quite clearly, some guys, I said, you get a good councillor in the area, vote for your councillor, but give us a second vote. And then we get our seats as PR councillors, and we in city council. It's as simple as that. And my voters, it's like a win-win situation. If you like your councillor, go and vote for him, no problem. I don't have a problem with that. Give us a second vote, we get a PR vote, and we get into the system. And city council is where we get our seats at the table, where we start making tangible differences and making... Look, from what we've already heard from people already speaking to us, I mean, the Indian population is the second largest in the province. We're sitting at about 1.2 million. And really, we can become a major force in city council. We can become what they call the kingmakers. to be able to move votes in a certain way, and then people have to come and negotiate with you because you have X number of seats. But the power comes from having the number of seats. If we have the seats, we can have the power.
100%. And, in fact, in Northwest, in Zeros, there's a small party called the Forum for Democrats. It's a Tswana-based party that started locally. And when they ran in 2021, they were denied a seat because someone erroneously wrote the wrong number of votes in one ward. In one ward, the EFF got 19 votes and someone wrote 191 votes for them. And so that ward cost them a proportional representational seat. I found out about it. We got an NGO involved. We got lawyers involved, and it took a few months, but that party got its seat on the council. So it doesn't take a lot of votes to win seats on city councils oftentimes, particularly in rural municipalities. So I think that's a good approach. And I don't have to tell you because it sounds like you're already clued into what I've been telling people all along. In 2021, I had the most extensive election coverage of any media outlet, including anyone in South Africa. No one covered elections. I interviewed 45 candidates from 7 different parties across the country in municipal elections for 2021 and focused on elections so much. And I encouraged, almost begged South Africans to go to the polls because your vote matters, particularly in a municipal election, because if you want to change perceptions about who can deliver for you, it starts at the local level. Who doesn't pick up your rubbish? Who doesn't make sure you have water? Who doesn't provide law enforcement? Who doesn't, the lights, the electricity? That all comes at the local level. You can have beefs with the ANC and with the DA and whoever at the national level and the IFP, but when it comes down to brass tacks, if you have no water, if there's potholes in your streets, it's not the parliament that's fixing that. It's your local government that isn't fixing it, and that's where you need to do it. And so my argument is that needs to be the focus. So it sounds to me, at least in my estimation as a political analyst, that you're on to something smart. Maybe because we agree, but I think you're on to something.
Yeah. No, we've look, let me say this, and I've been saying it openly. I'm no politician, right? I'm basically been thrown into the deep end to be able to, on the basis of my popularity and who I am and what I've said. Being popular as a comedian, entertainer, and a political spokesperson doesn't mean I'm the best politician. But what I do have is my people's interest at heart. I think I have the platform. I think I have the know-how. And most importantly, I have the passion for what I want to do. So I'm taking this vehicle forward. And somebody asked me, but do you know about all? I said, I don't need to know all of these things. I will have people in strategic positions to give me the advice that I need, as any great leader around the world in your country has advisors, and they will advise me. But right now, this is the model that's going forward. This is what's there, and we're going to ride this model. And I'm going to be like a sponge and gather enough information from my people around me to make sure that we do the right thing.
Well, that's awesome. I do need to just address one thing in the chat that's unrelated too. Sorry. Julia Bourdon says, I thought I'd pop in and it's the same old, same old. I don't know what she's talking about there. Sorry, Chris. I used to love your content until you slammed Trump. He's back. He's yay. Look, I don't know if there's like a discount sale on Daga that's going on in South Africa right now because Julie is smoking something. I'm well known as someone that openly challenges Donald Trump on his failures, but speaks and defends him openly. So I voted for the guy 3 times. I don't know what she's talking about. Donald Trump's back. Obviously, she doesn't watch my content. She's smoking some crack cocaine or Daga. I don't know. Maybe there's a discount on it this week and somewhere in South Africa. But yeah, Julie, you're clueless. I don't know where you got that from. I slam Trump. What planet are you on? You obviously don't watch my content. You pop on here to suit your needs, or you're just trolling. Anyway, sorry, I had to address that real quick because, honestly, hang on a second. I took this down because it usually sits right here on my broadcast, and it usually sits there on my broadcast, but I took that down earlier just because I was recording a video because it was inappropriate for the video, and I'm being attacked as someone that didn't vote for Trump. Seriously? Honestly? Come on. Anyway, I sat here and sang I will vote for Donald Trump from the Mexican band day after day until they put a copyright claim on it back in 2020. I did a 9.5-hour live broadcast for Trump. Anyway, it's everyone floats your boat, different strokes, different folks. Anyway, well, we're almost at the end of this, so let me just give you a chance to have the floor for a few moments there. And if you want to appeal to voters and say, hey, come to our banner, here's your chance, all right, if you want to make that pitch.
Yeah, no, just firstly, thanks for the opportunity and for reaching a different audience. I think where we stand at the moment, where I stand at the moment, I mean, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, I was nowhere near being in politics. And right now, I find myself as a leader of the newest political party in this country. And what's great about it is that there's this great, like a rejuvenation, like there's a breath of fresh air. And I'm glad to be a part of it. I think I have a role to play in this country. I think I have a role to play for my people, and it's momentous. And like I said, even for me, sometimes it's surreal where I am in the position I am in. And as you know, there are many critics. When I delivered my speech on on the weekend when I launched the party, I said, many people say, but you're not the best man for the job. I said, I agree. I said, I agree I'm not the best man for the job. But quite frankly, I'm the only man who signed up for the job. So I'm the only one in the ring. I'm the only one taking the hits, and not from now, for years. So when people say to me, other people say, listen, Casey, I'm trying to convince my family, but they've got stories and they don't believe. I said, don't argue too much with them. Just ask them the following question. If not me, then who? Because we have a serious vacuum of leadership, especially in our Indian community. So whilst I may not be the best man for the job, I'm gearing myself up, I'm educating myself, I'm trying to become the leader that can be there for all people. I'm by nowhere near the finished product. I'm learning every day as I go. But the thing is, the most important asset I have is that I have a passion for what I want to do. And I really most honestly want to make a difference in this country and for my people. And that's where I find myself.
Well, I'd say that's well said on your part, and thank you so much for your time. It's great to reconnect, and good luck with the party going forward. I think that was a very humble statement you just made there, and that's never a bad thing for an aspiring politician, is to be humble. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll chat again. I'll let you drop off, and then I'm going to wrap up the broadcast. All right.
Thank you so
much. You're very welcome. All right, folks. That was Karou Charou from KZN joining us to talk about the launch of his new party there. Yeah, let me see if I can help him get in the waiting room there. Okay. There you go. All right, so he'll be able to drop off. So listen, I'm not sure what Julie's going on about there. Really? I slam Trump? What? Yeah, so look, if someone does something that's needs to have some attention on it, they do something incorrectly, then they should be discussed. You don't become a sycophant and just go rah-rah for everything somebody does. I voted Trump now 3 times. And if it was legitimate and he could run again, I would vote for him again. I've also exposed the lies against Trump and the lawfare against him and torn apart every one of the fake cases, including the classified documents case, as a counterintelligence agent who investigated that very crime numerous times. So I'm not sure what Julie's going on about. There she is. Rude, unnecessary, won't be back. Well, you were rude, unnecessary to me, so piss off. Foot-sec, Julie. You were disrespectful to me. You lied, and you didn't explain it, so piss off. You're not welcome here if you're going to be an ass. I don't give a shit if you ever come back. Whoa, does that hurt your feelings? Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Is that door hitting you in the ass on the way out? Very disrespectful to me. You expect me to sit here and take your garbage? You pull this crap all the time. You pop on here every few months and spew lies. Bye. Bye-bye. Good Lord. My goodness. Unbelievable. Rude and disrespectful because I'm telling the actual truth about what I did. Foot-sec. That's just nonsense. Anyway, that was very humble of Karou Charou. So whatever you think, folks, I like what he said. I may not be the best man, but if not me, who? No one's stepping up. And that's good if somebody steps up. That's the problem. What I discovered when I ran for office this year is why so few good moral people of character actually run for office, because it's dirty. At least on this side of the Atlantic, it's very dirty. Very, very, very dirty. It's shameful what politics is about. And it becomes about, all the lobbyists and all the things that can be gained for political parties, not about serving the people and making your country a better place. I mean, I served in uniform for 36 and a half years in the Army, not to get wealthy, because I sure as heck didn't get wealthy from being in the Army. I mean, my top salary, finally achieved what I could have made 30 years ago if I got in the private sector. But I didn't do it for money. I did it to make a difference, and it's hard to find people who go into politics who will do that. So anyway. PK says, good on you, Chris. You need to bring people in like that. I bet. I get it, but he will not help South Africa. Well, PK, we'll see. But again, it's an open conversation. I'll talk to anybody that's not a racist. I mean, that's I don't. The only party that I've excluded that I won't talk to is the EFF, and the ANC runs every time I ask them to come on. I'll talk to people so people can hear what they have to say. I mean, that's the purpose of it. And Julie, I'm sorry that your feelings are hurt, but you were disrespectful and rude to me, and I wasn't rude back to you. I just answered the question and said it's not true. You come in here and make statements, and Trump's back. Well, yeah, he's back. He was never gone. He spent the last 3 years running for office, and he won. And he won decisively. Obviously, you don't watch the content, so you're living in a fantasy world. So you're rude to me. So, you don't want to come back, that's fine. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I don't get paid to do this. This is my second broadcast of the day, and I have a third broadcast for SpaceX later today. I'm not getting paid for that. This is my time. I make thousands of dollars doing consulting, and I'm not doing consulting so I can do this for the world. And if it's not something you like, then you don't have to watch it. You don't have to be here, but you don't have to be rude and disrespectful. I don't know who you are, where you live. I don't know your background, what you've done in your life. But I don't come into your neighborhood and piss all of you because I disagree with you. Anyway. All right, so, yep. All right, that's going to do it here. Oh, okay. There. I'm sorry. Julie did respond here. I didn't see this. She said, I'm not on drugs. You said it time and again how you don't like Trump. Yeah, I don't like him. So what? That doesn't mean I don't vote for him. Can you not make that distinction? Why is that so hard for people? You don't have to like someone to support what they're doing. I don't like Trump. He's crass. He's a bore. He's disrespectful. Kind of like what just happened here. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to vote for him. That doesn't mean I don't wholeheartedly support his campaign. If not Trump, then who? Who else could take getting shot? Who else could take all the nonsense but Trump? And he did it. And he rose. So I don't have to like somebody to endorse and back them. What I'm not is a MAGA person. I'm not part of that group of people who become sycophants in the MAGA world. But I enthusiastically vote for Donald Trump and support his policies. Almost all his policies. Although the use of the military to deport aliens, that's one we're going to differ on. So anyway, Julie, I'll tell you what. I'll offer you an apology for my comments here, if you'll accept that apology. But, you attacked me, so I got defensive. So, all right, I apologize to Julie if she took offense. Anyway, but you don't have to toss the toys out of the pram because you disagree with me. We can disagree and still have conversations. I disagree with things Trump has said and done, but I still vote for the guy. And that's the truth. And those who watch my program know that. I get accused of being a MAGA guy all the time, and I tell people I'm not a MAGA guy. But I am an enthusiastic Trump supporter. There's a distinction there, a very clear distinction. I'm a conservative. When Donald Trump ran for office in 2015, I didn't trust him. Why? Because of his history. He was a Democrat. I am very suspicious of people who are Democrats and then become Republicans. Very suspicious. That Jeff Van Dorn or whatever his name is, New Jersey, I'm not sure I trust him. Joe Manchin, I don't trust him. People that do that, you don't just change your principles so easily. And I don't want to hear the party moved away from me. Donald Trump was a Democrat, an enthusiastic Democrat. But I finally realized at some point why Donald Trump was a Democrat. He wasn't really a Democrat. He wasn't really a Republican. He's a patriot, and he did what he had to, legally, to run his businesses in New York, which is a very difficult place to do business, and for a long time was run by Democrats. So that's probably why he gravitated towards the Democratic Party. Anyway, so look, you don't have to agree with someone to hang out with them. So, yeah, politicians are more famous than movie stars lately. Who's been talking about Tom Hanks lately? Nobody, except about him threatening to leave the country. And who's been talking about, what's his name? Oh, gosh, Mission Impossible. Nobody's talking about him. Nobody's talking about him. Just had a big movie, Top Gun, Maverick. Then had another movie, Mission Impossible 96 or whatever they're up to now. And nobody's talking about him. Tom Cruise, not on the tip of your tongue. But boy, people are talking about Donald Trump and even Kamala Harris. Politicians are more famous than Hollywood celebrities these days. It's crazy. Anyway, so all right, thanks for tuning in. I've been chatting longer than I anticipated, closing this thing out. So my thanks to my guest. And for those who don't agree with them, that's fine. That's your prerogative. You don't have to like the guy. You don't have to agree with him. But I brought this to you. So other outlets won't do that. Other outlets won't take the time. And as I've always said, the only party I have no interest in talking to is the EFF. Now, if Julius Malema said to come to my program, I'd consider it. But For those of you who take issue with me talking a lot in my Indaba conversation with someone, you won't have to worry about it. If Malema comes on here, I'll never get to say anything. He'll be talking the entire time. He'll never shut up. Anyway, you guys take care. I'll be back for the SpaceX launch here at 4:30 Eastern Time, 11:30 South Africa time. And the launch is scheduled for midnight South Africa and 5 p.m. here. That's 4 p.m. in the Central Time Zone in Boca Chica. This launch of the Starship 6 launch, if I'm not mistaken, will showcase Donald Trump, the incoming 47th president, at the launch facility in Boca Chica with his buddy Elon Musk, someone else I don't trust, but I don't have major issues with. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you being here. Take care, and we'll chat with you in a bit. Bye-bye. So that's going to do it. Cheers.